These webinars are always so interesting because we can see that you're here, but obviously we cannot hear you. So if you have joined the webinar, thanks so much. I hope you're having a wonderful day and a great week, enjoying our beautiful Arizona spring weather. March is always my favorite month here. I don't want it to end. So I hope everybody's having a good day. Let's see, we'll give it just one more minute and we'll start right promptly at 6:02. Alrighty, it is 6:02. If you're here, you're in the right spot. Welcome to the Solar 101 for the 2024 Tucson Solar Co-op. We really appreciate you spending some of your Tuesday evening with us tonight. Really excited about this co-op. This is our fourth co-op in Tucson. We've done 4 consecutive rounds now, which is pretty wild to think about. Each round has been pretty much more successful than the last, so I'm excited to keep that trend going and help even more folks in Tucson go solar this year. I'm going to kick it off to my colleague Julio to get us started tonight.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Solar 101 2024 Tucson. Tonight, your hosts are going to be Adrian Keller, our Arizona Program Director, Regan Watson, our Solar Program Fellow, and me, Julio Espinosa, the Arizona Program Fellow. And please, a few housekeeping issues, join with your audio. Make sure that you choose the right settings on your computer. Also, submit your questions in the chat. If you have any burning question, if you want to raise your hand, please just submit your questions in the chat. And this webinar is being recorded, so no worries. Don't worry about taking notes because we will send a link with the recording to your email to everybody who RSVP. We also want to say thank you to our partners in Tucson, Sustainable Tucson, Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Sierra Club Grand Canyon. So thank you again to our partners in Tucson.
Yeah, and if I may jump in, just to say a couple words. At Sun, we don't run a co-op unless we have local partners on the ground who can kind of anchor us. Our community partners, as Julie mentioned, they help us plan the co-op, they help us execute it, they help us coordinate for different events. Sometimes we get press requests and media requests, and they help us out with that as well. All around, just really, really fantastic organizations that we get the chance to partner with in Tucson. We really appreciate their support again for the fourth year in a row. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, that is correct. A couple of weeks ago, indeed, we were at the Tucson Festival of Books, thanks to the invitation of Tucson Sustainable Tucson. And if you still want to see a face to this presentation, if you guys want to meet us in person and talk more about your questions, make comments, please join us. We will be in Tucson by the end of the month, April the 30th at 6 p.m. at Barrio Brewing Company. So again, it's 6 p.m. on April the 30th at Barrio Brewing Company. So I want to say that this is really important to us. We are a vendor neutral national 501c3. We are nonprofit. We don't sell solar panels. We don't make solar panels. We are just here to protect your best interest. We are here to educate the consumer on how to navigate the energy market. So we help people going solar because we believe that together we can create the momentum to fight for our energy rights. As you will learn later on, there will be opportunities for advocacy. Sun started very humble with only 50 homes in a suburb of Washington, D.C. The person with the sunglasses is Anya Schoolman, our founder and fearless leader, our CEO. That is her family, and her kids had the idea of going solar. So back then in 2007, it was just like a miracle going solar. So they organize their neighborhood, and 50 people, 50 households went solar with that first try. But after that, they learned and they grew. Now we are have members in all 50 states. So far, we have 419. That is about 400 ballpark numbers solar co-ops running in the country, and we have 8,900 homes that have gone solar with our co-ops. So you will see the growth in the organization, and also you will see that a lot of families are taking advantage of the benefits of going solar. Our national impact is, as I said before, 8,900 families with solar, which represents 75 megawatts of solar, or 995,000 tons of CO2 saved. So going solar has a lot of benefits. One of those is helping Mother Nature. So since 2019 here in Arizona, 538 people have gone solar with us. That is capacity of 4.3 megawatts, which represents 12 million invested in local solar, 22 million in energy savings over 25 years, 90 solar jobs created, 57,600 metric tons of lifetime CO2 offsets. As I said before, it's not only about the energy, but it's also about the environment. We're contributing to decrease our CO2 footprint. And so far, we have 16 solar co-ops in the state of Arizona since 2019. We have co-ops in Northern Arizona, in Scottsdale, Phoenix Metro, the East Valley. We actually even have a co-op in Portal, which is border with New Mexico Rodeo. And we have also Tucson. We love Tucson. I actually got married in Tucson, and Tucson is home to me. So it is really important to me that, and I lived for a while in Douglas, Arizona. So for me, it's important that we bring these resources to Southern Arizona, like Tucson, people later on, some point, maybe Sierra Vista, maybe Cochise, Graham County at some point. So help us with the growth of our co-ops here in Arizona. And it is important to know that the theory of change of going solar starts with a few people that together join forces and resources, and that is for the purpose of fighting for your energy rights, the right to own and produce your own electricity. And tonight we're going to learn about those particular topics regarding how to produce electricity through solar technology, the numbers, the economics behind solar, and also we're going to talk about how solar co-ops work. So with that being said, I want to thank you all again for tuning in tonight, and I will pass it over again to my friend and colleague, Adrian Keller.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julio, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. Yes, we've got kind of three sections for our presentation tonight. We should be wrapped up here in about 30 to 40 minutes at the most. As you have questions throughout the night, as I mentioned, please feel free to drop those into the chat as we go. Reagan and Julio and myself will do our best to answer those. I'm also going to take a brief pause in between each of these sections in case we have some questions that we'd like to get answered out loud for everybody. But with that, let's dive into solar technology. I want to start by saying this is a Solar 101, so I'm not going to be getting super in-depth into any one topic tonight. But if there's anything you'd like to discuss or dig into a little bit more detail, we would love to help you out with that. So let's take a step back. How do solar panels work? The short answer is magic. At least that's what it still feels like to me. But in reality, when we're talking about solar panels tonight, we're talking about solar photovoltaics or PV cells. So solar panels are made up of semiconductor materials, mostly silicon, but some other materials in there as well. And when photons from sunlight hit those solar panels, it dislodges the electrons in that semiconductor material, generating a flow of electricity. You may have heard of solar thermal or solar hot water heating before, and those technologies still exist. But today, the vast majority of the market, especially in Arizona, is PV solar, and that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. So a solar panel is also referred to as a module. They're the same thing. And each panel, like I said, is made up of individual solar cells. So those are those like black squares you see on the solar panel. Usually there's about 60 to 70 cells in any one solar panel sandwiched in between these two glass frames. And solar panels are decently large. Your average residential panels are about 6 feet by 3.5 feet typically. So you definitely need enough space on your roof to be able to handle solar. But when you install solar panels together, when you put them together like this, we refer to that as a solar array. To talk a little bit about how the system gets attached to your roof, most solar panels are going to be attached with a racking system. What you as a consumer need to know is that there's generally a racking solution for most types of roofs. Pictured here is sort of that typical asphalt shingle roof that we see a lot of in Arizona, where the rails, those metal rails will be screwed onto the roof, and then the solar panels are kind of just clipped onto those beams. If you have a flat roof, your installer may ballast the panels down, basically just means weighing them down so that they stay put. Some installers also may use a pitch pocket system, which essentially angles your solar panels upright a little bit so that they're at the optimal angle to be able to absorb the most amount of sunlight and generate the most amount of electricity. You can certainly also install solar on tile roofs, those kind of red tiles that we see a lot of in Tucson area. If they're real Spanish tiles, those like very, very old roofs that don't exist very much anymore, that is kind of one of the only few roofs that solar isn't great for. But if you have kind of that red tile roof, it's usually actually clay or cement, and you can install solar on those roofs just fine. Ground mounted solar can also be an option on your, especially if your roof is maybe not a good site for solar. Maybe your roof is heavily shaded or there's not enough unobstructed space. Maybe your roof is really old and it's going to be too costly to repair. Ground mounted solar can certainly be an option and something you can pursue through this co-op. You definitely need enough space on your property to be able to handle it, which is mostly why we see these typically in rural areas. A lot of farmers and ranchers often will install ground mounted solar so they've got a lot more space. Just keep in mind with ground mounted solar that it's almost always a little bit more expensive than rooftop, just because you've got to build and install those steel structures that hook it into the ground. And then depending on how far away it is from your meter, there may be some additional wiring or trenching that needs to be done. And there can just be some additional fixed costs associated with ground mounted solar. And then you'll need an inverter to invert that direct current DC energy from the solar to alternating current AC energy so that your appliances and the outlets in your home can use that electricity. There's essentially two different types of inverters. A string inverter is going to string all your panels together through a central panel, and everything's going to be fed through one central box. These work really well for simple installations where there's not a lot of shade. Think just like two, of the exact same rows of solar together. Oftentimes, installers will use a string inverter for that. Microinverters are doing the same thing, but just on the individual panel level. So there'll be a little microinverter under each panel. And microinverters can improve the overall efficiency of the solar system by reducing power losses caused by shading or other factors. They can also offer some greater flexibility and are helpful for more complicated installations. Again, as a consumer, as a homeowner, you don't need to know right now, I definitely need this type of inverter or I want this type of inverter. If you do want to dig into those details, we'd love to talk you through it. But otherwise, your installer is going to have a preference based on your home and your type of solar panels, and they'll be able to walk you through your options. And then to connect your solar panels to your home's electricity system, it's usually a pretty simple connection to your electric box or service panel. Most homes don't need an upgrade to be able to handle solar, but some will, especially older homes. One thing we always ask installers when they bid on our co-op is what is the price of a service panel upgrade? Because it's really, really helpful for you all to have that information going into it, because those upgrades can be rather costly. Side note, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, there actually are some tax credits and rebates available depending on your income to help pay for a service panel upgrade if it's associated with a solar installation, which can be really, really helpful to reduce those costs. And then just to clarify some of the terminology we'll be using throughout the evening, a kilowatt is a unit of power. So it is used to describe the size of a solar system in 1,000-watt increments. So 1,000 watts is 1 kilowatt. Pictured down here for the example, there's 10 350-watt panels. So if you add all that up, it's 4,200 watts. We'd call that a 4.2 kilowatt solar array. Kilowatt hours are units of energy. So that's what you see on your utility bill. It's used to describe the amount of electricity that your system is producing, and also the amount of electricity that you purchase from TEP or your other utility. In Arizona, average installations right now are between 7 and 8 kilowatts, to give you kind of an estimation of what most systems are like. Of course, if you have a bigger home with lots of usage, you might be getting a larger system. You can certainly do a smaller system as well, but 7 to 8 is usually what we're seeing. All right, so putting all the pieces together, you've got your beautiful, shiny, brand new solar panels up on your roof. They're absorbing that oh so abundant Arizona sunshine and generating a flow of electricity. Your solar inverter is taking that direct current and inverting it into alternating current, AC, so that your home can use it. And then the electrical panel, I kind of think of as the brains of the whole operation. So it's directing power where it needs to go and when it needs to go. And then solar owners will have what's called a bidirectional utility meter. And this is important so that your meter can not only measure how much electricity you're purchasing from TEP, but it also needs to be able to measure how much excess solar energy your home is producing that you're not using that will be fed back out onto those utility lines for you to receive credit for. Now, you may have heard of net metering before. And unfortunately, this is net metering as a policy is on its way out in Arizona, but it's been such an important policy in general for the success of rooftop solar that just wanted to touch on it briefly. So with a net metering system, it's going to track the flow of electricity to and from you, the customer. And whenever you're generating more power than you're using, that extra energy goes back to your utility and is counted on your meter for credit. Now, historically, you would have received that credit at a 1-to-1 ratio. So whatever the cost of electricity was at that time, you'd be credited that same amount per kilowatt hour. Now, unfortunately, due to a lot of various reasons, but mostly the Corporation Commission, the net metering system in Arizona is pretty much gone. There's a couple utilities that still use it very minorly, but for TEP customers, which will be most of you all, we now have a system called export rate credits, which I realize is like the least attractive name you could possibly think of for this. But essentially, instead of getting that 1-to-1 credit of whatever the price of electricity, that's what you're being credited. TEP is just going to pay you a flat amount per kilowatt hour. So if you install solar today, you're producing more than you're using, it'll be fed back onto the grid, and TEP will still credit you for that power, but just at a lower rate than it would have been with net metering, unfortunately. Now, solar customers who are solar owners, excuse me, who are TEP customers will have two main rate plans to choose from. They're both time of use, so the price of electricity that you purchase is going to vary a little bit depending on the time of day, but also the time of year. That's why you see a range in here for the charges of electricity. So starting with this plan on the right, the simple time of use plan, if you go for this plan, you'll see a charge for on-peak energy on your bill. You'll see a charge for off-peak energy. On-peak right now is 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., which is right now for you all and myself, actually. And then that solar export rate credit, that 6.33 cents a kilowatt hour, that's what TEP pays you for any excess solar that your system is feeding back to the grid. So you'll see your on-peak charges, your off-peak charges, and then you'll see a credit on your bill for however much excess energy you produced. And then both these plans have a flat service fee of $12. Now, the plan on the right, it's also time of use. And as you can see, the cost of electricity is a lot less, but the demand plan has a demand charge. And this is a flat fee you pay per month based off of the highest amount of generation of electricity you're consuming during peak hours. So if it's less than 7 kilowatts, you're paying $11.60 on your bill. Typically, what we see for Tucson customers is that they tend to go for the simpler plan on the left, the time of use plan. Even though the cost of electricity is a little bit higher, you're avoiding that costly demand charge, which is really hard for a solar system to offset. And depending on how your solar is designed, hopefully during the day, you're using most of your own electricity. And so you're able to avoid some of those higher costs of electricity anyway. I know this is a little complicated, and for folks who are new to this, like, don't worry, you do not have to figure all this out on yourself. If you sign up for the co-op and you move forward through the process, we would absolutely love nothing more than to help you pick a rate plan. We can even do some modeling based off of your historic usage to help you find a plan that's going to save you the most. But just wanted to give a quick basic of this, of what this will look like. All right, so when we're talking about what makes a really good site for solar, roof orientation is going to be really important. So south facing is going to be best case scenario if you can put solar panels on the south side of your roof. That's where you'll be able to absorb the most amount of energy or most amount of sunlight and be able to generate the most amount of electricity. Installing solar on the west side of your home can also be really beneficial, especially if you're thinking of it in the context of those peak prices that TEP has. So as the sun is setting, 6 to 9 p.m. right now, the sun is setting, your cost of electricity is much higher. But if you have solar on the west side of your roof, you're producing a lot of energy as the sun is setting, which is going to help you it's going to help reduce the amount of money you have to pay to TEP during those peak periods. So some folks try to position their solar pretty strategically to include west facing, especially if they know they're going to consume a lot of electricity during those pricier peak periods. Placing solar on the east side of your roof can work just fine as well, but we definitely don't recommend putting it on the north side of your roof unless you live on the equator. And then shading is another factor that's important to consider. So you want to make sure there's not a very large tree or trees that are going to be shading a large portion of your roof. Large structures or other buildings that could shade a portion of your roof. That's really important to keep in mind ahead of time. If you do have a very large tree or something, you may want to consider trimming it. It's just you'll be able to generate a lot more electricity. If that's a tree you have a sentimental attachment to, I completely understand. And maybe rooftop solar isn't going to be the best bet for you, but it's important to think about before going into this process. And then, of course, you'll need enough, excuse me, you'll need enough space on your roof. Like I said, most solar panels are about 6 feet by 3.5 feet. And so you need a decent amount of unobstructed space on your roof to handle a solar installation. When you sign up for a co-op, one of the first things that we do is a satellite roof review. So we check out your home's roof orientation, the shading around your home, and then the amount of unobstructed space on your roof to tell you whether or not, before you go any further in the process, yes, your roof is a really good site for solar, or it might not be, and here's why. But that's a really great free kind of pre-screening service that we offer to anybody who joins our solar co-ops. Awesome. So what happens when the power goes out? Let's say there's a really heavy storm, a big flood, the power shuts down. If you're a solar customer, your solar system is going to shut off automatically. And this is a safety mechanism actually built into the inverters. And the reason is because they want to protect the lives of utility workers. So let's say there's been a big storm, utility line has been downed, utility workers are out there working on it. They don't want any free electrons from your solar system feeding through those lines, which could damage somebody who's working on the lines out there. So if the if the grid shuts down, your solar is also going to shut off automatically. If you want to be able to have electricity during a grid outage, you may want to consider battery storage. So a battery can be especially helpful if you experience frequently utility outages and you need a source of backup power, especially if you don't want to use a gas generator. Talk with lots of folks who may have had a gas generator in the past and are trying to move away from that for a variety of reasons, but a battery can be a really great strategy. Battery could also be helpful if you have critical loads at home that you need to power. Think things like a well pump, medical equipment, maybe you're like a refrigerator for medicine that people need, uh, things where you would be in trouble if you didn't have electricity. And then, of course, just for general disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness, of course. But more and more people are also using battery storage as a tool to help reduce their energy bills. Pictured here on screen is Amy. She went solar through our last Phoenix area co-op last year, and she opted to include a battery with her solar installation. So Amy programs her battery so that right during peak periods, which for APS customers is 4 to 7 p.m., her battery will kick on and her home will use electricity stored in that battery instead of pulling it from the grid. Then the next day in the early morning when the sun's coming up, she's not using a lot of power at home, that solar is going to recharge her battery. Then, assuming it's a sunny day, she's using power from that solar that's being generated. And then again at 4 to 7 p.m., her battery kicks on. So it's helping her reduce those on-peak charges and some of those demand charges as well. And it can be a really helpful tool for that. It's important just to point out that batteries are still really expensive. As a whole, broadly, they're coming down and we expect them to continue to reduce costs, but they still can be a very expensive addition to your solar installation. It can be a really helpful tool for a variety of reasons, but just keep in mind that they are not the cheapest still. If you have any more questions about batteries or really want to dig into some more details, we've got a great free guide on our website, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. Or feel free to drop a request in the chat and I'd be happy to just email this guide to you directly. Excuse me. Here's one other test case of a battery system. So the Johnsons lose power several times a year. Whenever the grid goes down, they're usually without power for a full day. So when they went solar, they purchased a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery bank, pretty typical size. And that's fully recharged by their solar system daily. If the sun is not shining, they've got about a day's worth of power with that battery, and that battery will power their refrigerator, microwave, some lights, outlets, a cable modem, a small window air conditioner. But that one battery is not going to have enough juice to power their stove, their clothes dryer, electric water heater, or like a whole home system, AC or HVAC unit. It's just not going to have enough juice for that. So just kind of an example here of how some folks are using their batteries. All right, now closing out this first section with some of the questions we get asked most frequently about solar. And the first one is about warranties. So a typical solar installation is going to come with 3 different types of warranties. First is a power production warranty. These are typically a 25-year warranties from the solar panel manufacturer, which guarantees that by year 25, the panels are still going to be producing an expected amount of power that they did on day one. So for example, we often may see a 25-year, 90% power production guarantee. This just means that by year 25, that solar system's still going to be producing at least 90% of what it did on day one. You'll also have a parts warranty that will cover the solar panels, the inverters, and any other physical materials associated with the installation. These can range, but typically we like to see between 10 and 25 years for parts warranties. And then you'll also have a labor warranty, and that covers any roof penetrations done by the actual solar installer, as well as any other work done by the installation company. These can also vary, but again, typically we see about 10 to 20-year range for most labor warranties. And those are really, really helpful for peace of mind. Depending on your roof, like your installer may be drilling into your roof to attach the equipment. And so that warranty is basically just saying, if anything goes wrong with the roof in the next 10 years, and it was the fault of the solar installer, they're going to have to pay for that. So that can be a really good, important warranty to make sure that is included. Now, homeowners insurance, when you add solar to your home, it's a really good idea to give your insurance company a call and let them know that you did add solar to your home. Most people do not see any sort of increase with their homeowners insurance. And if you do, I would definitely ask why, and it may be worth shopping around for a different organization or a different company. Solar panels actually do provide some level of protection for your roof, especially against hail and rain and some other environmental factors. So many insurance companies actually consider them an asset. Now, one of the great things about having solar is that it's very low maintenance. It's not no maintenance, but it's pretty low maintenance. Normal precipitation, normal rain, storms are going to keep your solar panels pretty clean. If it's been a really long time since there's been some rain, or maybe there's been a very large dust storm that's passed through, it's a good idea to call a solar panel cleaning company just to have them cleaned properly, as a significant amount of dust can inhibit their ability to produce as much power as they should. It's also really smart to have a visual inspection done every couple of years by your installer or a servicing company to make sure that things are acting as they should be and producing the amount of electricity that they should be. Most solar installations today come with a tracking app that's usually from the inverter, where you can check out your smartphone or your tablet and see in real time how much energy your system is producing. If you have that capability, it's very smart to check that regularly. If all of a sudden you see your production is way down, but it's a nice sunny day, that could be a sign that maybe a panel or a couple panels aren't working, or there's been some kind of misconnection. So always just kind of a good idea to keep an eye on them and make sure that they're producing as expected so that you're not paying any unnecessary money to TEP that you don't have to. Now, how long will a solar system last? Like I mentioned, warranties are usually for 25 years. Solar panels will last 25 years, but I've seen solar panels on homes producing energy that have been there for 30 years, which is older than me, even 35 years if they're well taken care of. So solar panels will last well beyond 25 years, but just keep in mind their efficiency will decrease over time. And then if you live in a homeowners association, the Arizona actually has a law on the books that says HOAs cannot stop you from adding solar to your roof. Now, they are allowed to put in some kind of review process. Like oftentimes they'll have like a design review board, for example, but there's actually been an appeals court decision that has ruled at the end of the day, HOAs cannot outright stop you from installing solar. If you join the co-op and you're running into any issues with your HOA, please feel free to reach out to Sun and we would be happy to help you navigate that. Finally, if you are in a historic district, I'm just always going to tell people check your district guidelines. They vary so widely from city to city. Even within city, different districts can have different guidelines and rules. For example, where I live in Phoenix, there's a historic district nearby where you can install solar, but it can't be visible from the main street in front of the house. Kind of would have to be in the back or on the side. So always just a good idea to check with your historic district guidelines first to make sure that you're not jeopardizing any sort of tax incentives associated with that historic property. I think that was my last slide for solar technology. I'm just going to take a peek at the chat, see if we have any questions. Does not look like it, but I'm going to give folks just 10 seconds while I take a water in case you have a question. I know I just covered a lot. And thanks, Reagan, for dropping all these resources in. And Julio. Alrighty. So our next section is solar economics. This is all about kind of pricing, tax credits, financing, all of that fun stuff. So I love looking at this chart. It makes me happy every time I see this chart. The cost of solar has come down substantially in the last 40 years, but even in just the last 10 years, we've seen the price of solar drop pretty significantly. This chart on the right refers to the price per watt, the average price per watt of solar. And in the 70s, it wasn't uncommon for solar panels to be, north of 10, even $20 a watt, whereas today you can find solar for less than $3 a watt. It's pretty wild how much it's dropped in the last few years. Solar is no longer just a specialty or a boutique project that only the very few can afford. It really does have an excellent return on investment even today, and that's made even more true thanks to the federal solar tax credit. So this chart kind of refers to why solar still costs what it does today, and it breaks down the cost into these different sections. So the bottom in yellow is the cost of system components. So the cost of making solar panels, of making inverters, the racking systems, and those costs have come down quite a bit since the 2010s. That little green sliver in the middle, that refers to labor costs. So installers, salesmen, designers, that kind of thing. And labor costs have also fallen a little bit, but remain relatively stable throughout the years. That really, really big orange bar at the end, that refers to soft costs, which are really anything other than the physical components associated with the solar installation. And the big, big one of these is marketing. Solar, especially rooftop solar, is very competitive industry in Arizona. And installers have to spend a lot of money on marketing to just find customers who will be able to sign a contract. Every installer works a little bit differently and everybody has different marketing tactics, but on average, as a trend through the industry, it's not uncommon for installers to pay thousands of dollars just to find each customer that they'll end up signing a contract. Um, Whereas you contrast that with Sun's model of going solar, we organize lots of people, usually 100 to 150. We educate them about solar, we prepare them for solar to make sure they're ready to go. And then installers are able to offer discounts since they don't have to pay the exorbitant cost in marketing to find these customers. So we hand over a list of 100 people who are ready to go solar, and they're able to pass some of those savings on to you. Sun charges each installer $600 for every signed contract that they end up with from the co-op. That's partly to recoup our costs, kind of think of it a little bit as a finder's fee. But we've heard over and over and over again from installers that that is a bargain. And per contract, $600 is very, very good for them. So it's good for them. They're able to find more customers all in one place. And it's good for you all since you're able to save some money on your solar installation. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal solar tax credit has been extended and expanded until 2032. After that date, it will once again start to step down a little bit. It's important to know that without the Inflation Reduction Act, this tax credit would have expired, I believe, in 2023, and it would have been zero. So we're very, very thankful that this 30% still exists and is a really, really powerful tool to help lots of people go solar. It's important to note that this is a tax credit and it's not refundable. What that means is you need to have paid federal income taxes in order to claim this tax credit. So if you go solar this year, for sake of round numbers, let's say it costs $10,000. When you file your taxes next spring, you'll be eligible for a tax credit worth $3,000. But if you do not make any income, you don't pay any federal income taxes, unfortunately, you're not able to claim that tax credit. The state of Arizona also offers a 25% state tax credit. However, it's capped at $1,000. So pretty much everybody's just able to claim that $1,000. We also have a law in the state that says if adding solar increases your property tax value, if adding solar increases your property value, it cannot increase your property tax liability, which is really, really helpful for folks. And then we don't pay sales taxes on solar panels here in Arizona. Now, as Sun, obviously, we're mostly interested in the solar components of the Inflation Reduction Act, but just a couple other things I wanted to point out for the benefit of you all, especially if you're considering any sort of home renovations or upgrading your heating and cooling systems, upgrading some appliances. There are a variety of tax credits and rebates, some available right now, some are coming very soon that you can receive for an electric vehicle if you need to upgrade your service panel. Maybe you have an EV, but you need an EV charger at home. There's a rebate available for that. If you're getting rid of your gas heating system in favor of a heat pump, there are tax credits and rebates available for that as well. Battery storage also qualifies, and for battery storage, it's a 30% tax credit, which significantly helps reduce the cost of storage. Electric stoves as well. Also, insulation, energy efficiency upgrades. There's a wide variety of things that if you're doing to make your home more energy efficient, cleaner, run on more electricity, there may be a tax credit or rebate that you qualify for. And what we found is a lot of people consider this stuff when they're adding solar. And so all I would say is that if you're considering making any adjustments to your home or appliances will be electric, consider looking into these rebates because you may be able to get some help paying for it. And if you need any help with that, we would love to help you out. All right, so I know what you're asking, but what does it cost, right? So unfortunately, I can't answer that question super specifically because every single co-op we do is a separate bidding round. So it's partly going to depend on what installers are able to offer you all this year. But for the sake of example, we've included here some sample pricing based on $2.75 a watt. We've seen a little bit higher than that before in our co-ops. We've seen a little bit lower than that before in our co-ops, but just to give you a rough sense of what solar costs. So we've broken this out by a 4 kilowatt system, which is a little smaller, and an 8 kilowatt system, which is a little closer to the average size in Arizona. So assuming the price was $275 a watt, that would cost $11,000 for the 4 kilowatt system or $22,000 for the 8 kilowatt system. And now just staying on the 8 kilowatt system here, assuming you're eligible for the tax credit, you could get a tax credit worth 30%, which would be $6,600. In addition, you'd get $1,000 back from the state of Arizona, bringing the net cost of your solar from 22,000 closer down to $14,000. And then at Sun, we've got some really cool modeling software where we look at how much money you're going to save if you go solar by not paying as high of electricity bills. So again, with that 8 kilowatt example for Tucson, we estimate the average customer is going to save close to $2,000 in their first year. It's money that would have been going to TEP's pocket, but instead is yours to save and do what you will with. After 10 years, you're saving more than $20,000 on electric bills. And after the lifespan of the system, after 25 years, it's closer to $58,000. And so you can see after the full 25 years of your system, again, especially if you pay cash, you're going to actually end up with a net profit at the end of all of this, which is really, really cool to see. And again, this is a really significant savings even still today. So there's a few different ways for you all to go about financing your system. Of course, if you're able to pay cash up front, that's going to be the highest upfront cost, but we'll also maximize your savings in the long run. I'm going to talk about loans on the next slide. Third-party ownership, this refers to power purchase agreements, PPAs, or leases, mostly leases in Arizona for residential customers. This is where a third party, usually the installer, owns the solar system on your roof, and then you're paying a flat rate per month to be able to lease the panels. And so you're still benefiting from the electricity that those solar panels are producing. But at the end of your lease agreement, whether that's 10, 15, or 20 years, whoever owns them is going to come back and take them off your roof unless you extend that lease agreement. In general, what I tell people is if if you can't afford to buy your system up front, strongly consider getting a loan. Ownership of solar panels is going to be significantly higher savings than if you were to lease the solar panels. However, one area where a lease may be potentially attractive is if you don't qualify for the 30% tax credit. Let's say you don't have any income or you make very low income, but the installer or whatever third party you're leasing with, they could claim that tax credit. And so we've seen some situations where a homeowner wants to go solar, they can't claim the tax credit. So their installer, they end up signing a lease. The installer is able to claim the 30% tax credit and is able to reduce the monthly lease payment as a result of that. So that this leases can certainly be an option, and most of the installers we work with do offer them. But in general, we try to encourage people towards ownership if they can. And then one grant we like to point out for people is the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP for short. This is a program for rural small businesses and farmers to fund energy efficiency upgrades as well as solar. The IRA actually extended this program where now REAP participants can get up to 50% of the cost of solar paid for through a REAP grant, which is really, really exciting. And so if you or you know somebody who's a rural business or a farmer, rural or not, they may qualify for a REAP grant and could get up to 50% of the cost covered. So loans are probably one of the most common ways that people finance their system, especially through our co-ops. The important thing to note with loans is that you have options, and we're always going to encourage you to shop around to find the best loan product for you. Many installers are, frankly, all installers really that I've seen do offer in-house financing through a third-party financing company that they partner with, which is really common. That can work really, really well. It makes things simpler. You're kind of just doing all things through the one company instead of having to go out and find a separate solar loan. But the devil is in the details, right? So you've seen some situations where people sign a loan agreement, maybe has really, really low APR, but has a really high finance fee that they weren't really aware of. So if you're considering taking a loan to pay for your solar systems, we just always encourage people to read the fine print. Please read the fine print and shop around because there may be a loan option that's even better. Uh, if we were talking about this 5 years ago, I may have recommended a home equity line of credit or refinancing your home with interest rates where they are today. I definitely do not recommend that, but that can be an option to finance solar. And then Sun Solar Co-op members have access to the Clean Energy Credit Union and the Community First Credit Union. So these are national credit unions that our co-op members have access to that provide solar loans and often at a very competitive and appealing rate. And then I always just encourage people to check out their local bank or credit union. They may offer a solar loan. Surprisingly, in Arizona, it's actually not that many banks who offer solar loans. I wish there were a lot more. Most of our Tucson members either tended to get a loan from their installer or through Tucson Old Pueblo Credit Union. Those tend to be the most popular options. But again, if you need any help with this, we would love to help you shop around and find a best loan option for you. And then this is very unique to this co-op, but thanks to a very generous anonymous donor who lives in Tucson, we have funding available to help at least 5 households pay for their system through the co-op. Depending on the size of system, these will be either $5,000 or $7,000 grants, which pretty substantially reduces the total cost of a system, even more so if you're also able to take advantage of that tax credit. To qualify for this program, you need to live in Tucson. There is an income requirement that you need to be at or below 130% of area median income. We've got some charts for what those income limits are on our website. You also need to be the owner and occupier of your home and live in a census tract that is identified as underserved. Your roof also needs to be in decently good shape. We're not able to pay for a full roof replacement, unfortunately. So like I said, we still have funding available. We're still accepting applications for this program. It's really, really awesome when we get to help somebody pay for their solar system, especially somebody who's struggling to keep up with their monthly electric bills. You can apply for this at solarunitedneighbors.org/Tucson. There's a little tab on that website where you can get some more information about this program. And as always, please feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions about the requirements. Awesome. All right, we made it through the solar economics section. I'm just going to take another quick break to check the chat. Yeah, good question from Barbara about EVs. It's kind of one thing I don't actually touch a whole lot on in my presentation, and I wish I had a little bit more. It's important to note that through our co-ops, we ask installers for pricing information on solar panels, on batteries, and home EV chargers. So whoever wins this bid for this co-op, you'll be able to pursue all of those or a mix of those. We've had people join the co-op just to get a battery. We've had people join the co-op just to install an EV charger. You're welcome to do that, of course, in addition to solar or without solar. You don't need a battery to be able to charge your EV at home. It can be a great tool to help store some of that solar for use after sunset. Again, especially if you're trying to avoid some of those peak periods. But you don't have to have a battery. You can just have solar and an EV charger. And if you're charging during the day, your car is driving on sunshine, which is a really cool thing to think about. Excuse my voice. I have not talked this long in a really long time. So our last section here is our shortest about how the co-op process itself works. Some of the benefits of going solar through a co-op, first and foremost, like I mentioned, we aggregate lots of consumers together. So everybody goes solar together through one competitively selected installer. This helps you save money on your installation since the group is getting a bulk discount. We at Sun are also going to help support you through the process. As Julio mentioned, we're an unbiased 501c3 vendor neutral nonprofit. We're not affiliated with any installer. We're not just trying to make a sale off of you. We really truly want people to feel comfortable about their decision to go solar. One of my favorite parts about my job is helping people, especially those who are brand new to solar, navigate this process. Solar can be intimidating and complicated and expensive, and our role at Sun is trying to make it all less three of those things. We're going to provide expert technical guidance on all things solar. We'll help you make an informed decision that you feel really good about. And we're also going to help connect you with a network of other solar lovers in your neighborhood so that you can become part of a growing movement that has a broader impact on solar throughout the state and the nation. The entire co-op process is usually about a 6 to 8 month process, depending on the length of installation. We launched this co-op the first week of March, and it'll be open for a couple more months. And you all right now are in step one. You're here at the Solar 101, and hopefully you're learning something new about solar. Once we wrap up tonight, I really hope that you'll sign up for the co-op online. It is free to join, and there's no commitment to go solar. You can back out at any time without penalty. And if you do sign up for the co-op, I really hope that you'll help spread the word with your friends, with your neighbors, coworkers, anybody you know who doesn't like paying their electric bill. We have a goal of 150 signups for this co-op, and I think we're just under 30 right now. 150 is definitely doable, but we would really need all of your help in order to reach that goal. Now, step 4 is all about selecting an installer. And it's really important off the bat that I say at Sun, we don't pick the installer. You all, the ones who will have skin in the game, who will be paying for your solar, you all are the ones who gets to pick which installer you work with. So once the co-ops reach critical mass, usually around 30 or so members, we are going to issue a request for proposal to solar installers who will bid on the co-op a discounted rate in order to win the whole group's contract. Now, Sun, we're going to receive those bids. We're going to review them, check for references, licensing, insurance, make sure they are up to our standard of what a good solar installer should be. And then we're going to present those options to you all. And whoever volunteers out of the co-op will form what we call the selection committee. They'll meet together one evening. They'll review all of those bids together and with our guidance, vote to select one installer on behalf of the group. Now, there'll be a sign-up deadline for the co-op. I believe it is in June for this one. I'm sorry, I don't know right off the top of my head, but co-op's still open for another couple months. And after the installer is selected, they're going to start the process of reaching out to every single co-op member. They're going to check out your roof. They'll talk to you a little bit about what your goals are. They may ask for your historic utility bills so they can see how much energy you've used in the past. And they're going to design a custom proposal for your roof, but with the negotiated co-op pricing. So everybody's still getting their own solar system, but at a reduced rate. So at this point, if you're feeling really good about your solar system and the design, you've got financing lined up that you feel really confident about. At this point, we hope you go ahead and sign a contract with the solar installer to move forward at the installation phase. But again, if you don't, for whatever reason, you can back out at any time. No hard feelings, no penalties. Once you've signed a contract with your solar installer, it's probably going to take at least a few weeks for them to work through the design process, but also the permitting process. The actual day of installation itself is usually just a day, maybe a day and a half, two at the most. But the solar installers work fast. It's really more of the back end permitting and design work that takes some time. The day of solar installation actually happens very quickly. After your solar is installed, your utility has to sign off on it, where they issue what's called permission to operate, or PTO. That can also take a couple weeks after installation. And so the entire installation process could take anywhere from a month to a couple months, depending on your utility or your city and how their permitting process works. But once your system is installed and your utility is issued permission to operate, your installer will turn your system on. It'll begin generating electricity for your home, and you'll begin to save money on your utility bills right away. And then after the co-op wraps up, once most installations are completed, I would love to come back down to Tucson to celebrate with you all. Get together, usually at a brewery or a restaurant or something, where we can kind of chat about the successes of the co-op and the impact that we were able to have in Tucson. Awesome. As we close out tonight, I just want to remind everybody that we will be at the Barrio Brewing on April 30th. Brewing, that is a hard word for me to say. Barrio Brewing on April 30th. Free beer on us to the first probably 20 or so attendees. It's going to be a similar presentation as to what we've given tonight. So if you have a question that you'd really love to ask us, but in person, feel free to just show up at 7 or 7:15 and get a beer and we can chat about it. All right. I'm going to end with just a couple quotes from some of your fellow co-op members. All the people here pictured and quoted went solar through a co-op in Tucson. Marjorie and Michael Blaine, who I had the chance to meet last year, said that the co-op was very helpful. Sun did the hard work, they got all the bids, and we felt like we had a support system. This process was great, and I was just so thrilled that you all are doing this and that we found you because it really is a lot of work to do it by yourself. We hear that a lot. Trying to find your own solar bids can be really intimidating, and we take care of that part for you. The Hermans, also in Tucson, said that it's really hard to weed through all the disinformation about solar online. Having support from the co-op made a world of difference. It gave us peace of mind and made us feel comfortable with moving forward. And finally, Deanne and Rob said that going through the co-op was a relief because we aren't experts. It would have taken us a very long time to figure everything out. The co-op really was the way to go. It just made sense. More people, more buying power. Could not have said it better myself. All right, so that really wraps up my presentation. The co-op is open now. You can sign up at solarunitedneighbors.org/Tucson. As I mentioned, we do have financial assistance available if you meet the income requirements. If you sign up for the co-op, really appreciate it if you'd share it with a couple people as well so we can reach our goal of 150. And then our team email is here, the AZ team at solarunitedneighbors.org. Reagan, Julio, and I are going to hang out for a couple minutes after in case anybody has any questions. Otherwise, feel free to send us an email and we would love to connect with you. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us tonight and hope you sign up for the co-op.